revised motion.
Okay.
Thanks, MC. 6:01, if that clock is right, on August 15th, 2023, and this is a meeting of the Board of Trustees, Dexter Township. So I'm going to start with just the roll call. Karen Nolte?
Here.
Lonnie Scott?
Here.
Mary Smets? Here. Michelle Stamoulis?
Present.
Laura Sanders?
Here.
And Gretchen Driscoll?
Here.
And welcome, Gretchen. It's Gretchen's first
Good to
meeting,
be
so
here.
we're delighted to have you. And just a conflict of interest check. Does anybody have a conflict of interest with any items on the agenda tonight? No? Great. Okay, then the first call for public comment, and just a reminder, we changed the agenda a little bit, so we're asking people, when you're making public comments at the start, please focus on the agenda items, and then comments at the end will be on non-agenda items. So if there's anything you would like us to know in making our decisions tonight, now is the time to share those. And we would ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes and state your name and address for the record. So is there any public comment?
Barry, would you grab the microphone?
Yes.
Because that's the one we're using, and make sure the green light is on. I don't think that works.
I think you need this one.
That one.
Bring it up to here. My comment is about the master plan, which is on a consent agenda item, so does that count?
I don't think the master plan is,
There's a resolution to change the resolution number or something of that nature. Does that count?
yes.
Okay.
Yes, for the purpose
It's a
of,
quick
I'm
comment.
guessing you don't want to stay for the whole meeting, so let's say yes.
That was nice.
I'm on my way to go run and
Yeah.
swim, so
Yeah.
maybe I'll pop back later. So I just have two quick comments on the master plan. I emailed them to Karen and to Marty and I think to the Farmland Board as well. I want to say that I think it's a really solid document, and it's been needed for a long time, and so I want to thank you all for your leadership in getting that going. Both of my comments are on map 22, which is the future land use map. The first one is that I would suggest that any parcel, especially any that has any size to it, that has any ag use on it at all, be included in the agricultural preservation area. Having that there scores points on state and federal applications, grant applications. There's only a few properties that could be added to that. I'd be happy. I mean, they're pretty obvious if you look at the aerial photographs, but I'd be happy to provide those if you want to. And I said, I think you should just throw in properties that have wetlands and woods that are adjacent to those areas as well, even though they're not agricultural. Doesn't mean they can't be in your ag preservation area. And having it be a little bit bigger and having it be contiguous, I think there's some benefit to that also. And that's the first comment. The second one is there's a parcel just up the road here on the west side of Dexter Pinckney Road, north of Territorial, that's designated in the zoning map as rural residential. In the map 22, it is designated as neighborhood commercial. And so I would suggest it to be in conformance with there's a couple of parcels that those folks own. The southern one is zoned commercial and master planned for the neighborhood commercial, but it's the northern one that is zoned rural residential, but in this draft master plan map, it is part of that neighborhood commercial area, and so I would suggest changing that to rural residential.
Okay, Barry, if you are free on Saturday night, the master planning consultant is going to be here at the township from 6 to 7:30,
Okay.
collecting public feedback about it, and there's also going to be a food truck and some music and and some other things going on, and then a movie, the Super Mario Brothers later. So, but if you could come from 5, I mean, if you happen to be free and could come from 6 to 7:30 and give that feedback directly to the
Okay.
planning consultant, I think that would be really useful, especially because they'll be here with maps, and so you'll be able to mark all this on a map.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
And I
will
mean,
try to do
if
that.
you can't, I mean, I can always,
Well, and if you can't,
I can always
we'll
pass the information along for you.
And I think I copied that person on
Yes,
my
you did.
emails as
You
well,
did.
so.
You did. You
But I
did.
understand if I can be here at that time,
Yeah.
I'll try
Yeah.
to do that too.
Yeah.
I don't know my plans yet.
Yeah. Well, I know you live in Dexter Township, so I'm sort of hoping, but But yeah, we will certainly get the information to them one way or the other.
Great, thank you. Anybody else for the microphone? If not, I'll move it back.
So is there any other public comment? Okay, so hearing none, next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda, and you will see for the Board of Trustees, I passed out a new agenda, and the reason for that is that I have added to the action items, which is point number 7, I added a point E, which is a motion to approve a letter of support on behalf of 5 Healthy Towns Foundation for a grant application. Normally, I would put that on the consent calendar, and because I think it's a pretty routine matter, but I only got the request to do this yesterday, and it's due August 30th. So it was, you know, and since I didn't have a chance to pass it out to all of you guys so you could read and process it in advance, I put it on the regular calendar in case you have any questions, or to give you a moment to read it before I ask you to vote on it. So are there any other, and I also understand that at the last meeting, you all asked that the approval of the agenda be moved off the consent calendar and onto the regular calendar, so I did that for just this reason. So is there any other requested change to the calendar, to the agenda tonight? Okay, then do I hear a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Yes.
I just, never mind, go ahead. I was just wondering if we had to talk about the resolution change. No?
Well, that's an action item we'll talk about.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so next is the consent agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda, a consent agenda?
I'll move to approve.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Who made that motion? Thank you, Maris.
And Laura seconded.
So
And well, we'll go with Laura.
Laura down as the second.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so now, next up on the agenda is the presentations, and just as a reminder, our big decision tonight is about the millages, and I wanted everybody to be oriented basically to millages. This is our primary source of general fund revenue, and it's our only source of police and fire revenue, and it's a primary source of our open space revenue. So I know we've routinely approved it in past years, and I think that was a good decision, but I thought it would be useful for the board to kind of understand the millage and how the whole thing works. So we have our deputy treasurer here, Matt Ditas, to talk to us a little bit big picture about the role of the treasurer. And then Chris, I don't know how to pronounce, I meant to ask you ahead of the meeting, but how do you pronounce Renius? So Chris Renius is our assessor, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about Headley and the assessment and how that works. And really, Chris is the one who primarily does the calculations that result in the millage recommendations. But Matt will give us, I think these two presentations together will give you all a good understanding of our revenue stream. So let's start with you, Matt.
Point of order. Maybe I'm,
Grab the microphone.
did we move to approve the consent agenda?
Yes.
Oh, I thought we were approving the revised agenda. We did both.
Yes.
Okay, I missed
We
that.
had 2 votes.
Okay, sorry. Thanks.
Could I just
You're going so fast.
And
Right over my
if I
head.
need to?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
So Maris,
I'll be here backing you up.
she'll be a friend, just look at her, she'll be your friendly face.
Did everybody get their sample tax bill?
Yes, I handed out
Handed
the
that out.
sample tax bill, and it should say owner 2 on it. You'll see that I kind of blocked out addresses and stuff just so, for privacy reasons, but this is just a sample tax bill of the years 2021 and 2022, and this is, I did this so we could kind of, Matt can kind of break this down for you about how to read the tax bill, but then also to show, it was change of ownership of this parcel, and in that change, you'll be able to see the taxable value in SEV and how it changes when Chris talks about it as well, so.
Yeah, and I just wanted to touch on some basic tax collection procedures and also address some frequently asked questions that we get from the residents to hopefully clear up some confusion about how this thing is put together and all the rhyme and reason to it. So if you look in the upper left-hand corner of it, you'll see a lien date of December 1st, 2022. This is a question that I've had a handful of times from residents that are somewhat scared that perhaps that they hadn't paid their taxes. When you hear the word lien, it could mean I'm delinquent on my taxes, and that's not necessarily the case. Every parcel on December 1st and July 1st is going to say lien date of July 1st or December 1st. Every single parcel. So under that, this particular one is an escrowed parcel, so you'll see that this is a copy of your tax bill, that the original has been sent to your lender for payment from escrow. So what this means...
Matt, can I interrupt you for a second?
Sure.
Are you looking at the 2022
It doesn't really
bill
matter.
or the 2020?
I am looking at the 2022 one. I
Yeah.
thought you guys
So we-
had one.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, thank you, sorry.
Okay. So this particular parcel that we're looking at here is escrowed. So that means that a mortgage company is paying their taxes for them. They're paying into this escrow fund, and then the company will pay their taxes for them. Now, we run into some confusion here as well with taxpayers. One thing being when they pay their mortgage off. They don't necessarily have to contact us to say that they did so. A lot of times, or actually all the time, the mortgage company will reach out to us and say the mortgage has been paid off. You can release that from your records. So that's something that the taxpayer doesn't have to necessarily be concerned about. Now, if they decided to pay their own taxes and not have them escrowed anymore, then yes, they should contact us and let us know. All right, so as far as payment of taxes, so we have a couple different sources of ways that you can pay your taxes. You can pay by cash, you can pay by check, or online via the service that we use called Point and Pay. Now, Point and Pay is a great service, but it's also important to know that they do charge a 3% convenience fee for credit card payments. So that is handy, but yes, there is that additional fee on top of it. Now, where we run into a lot of our issues with tax collection is people paying by check. There's a lot of times that checks aren't written out properly, or they're not dated, they're not signed. One of the biggest ones is the actual written out amount of the check is either missing or it's incomplete. The bank, unfortunately, only accepts that written out portion of the check and not the numerical portion. So without that, the bank won't accept it. We have to go through our records and see if we have contact information for that particular person. If we don't, we have to send them a letter, and that can be problematic, especially if you're nearing the end of tax collection, because it takes time to get that correspondence out to them and back. In a Dexter Township, we do have a large number of people that own multiple parcels of land. So Treasurer Metz and I have the liberty of going through all 3,800 parcels by hand, and we pull those multiple parcels out because we like to send them out in just one envelope instead of them receiving tax bills individually. So people can add those parcels up and just give us one complete check to pay for all of their property. That's not a problem because sometimes we do receive checks. We receive multiple checks for people that have multiple parcels. So to save time and resources, you can put it all in one check. Summer tax payments are due on 9/14 every year. If you do not pay those by 9/14, we still collect summer taxes all the way up until this coming year is a leap year, so it's going to be February 29th, so we get that one extra day to pay taxes this year. But a 1% interest will accrue monthly on those summer taxes until February 29th. Winter payments we have by statute are due on February 14th. However, we do collect them up until February 29th of 2024 without penalty or interest. That can be a little confusing, but Treasurer's Office will be open 8:30 to 4:30 on February 29th. Another thing I wanted to touch on was we get people that sometimes get some sticker shock about the difference between the summer and winter differences on their tax bills. In the summer, Dexter Township only levies Washtenaw County operating and state education tax. So your summer bill is going to be substantially lower than your winter bill when we levy all of our school millages, police, fire, schools, community colleges, things of that nature. So you could have a resident moving from an area, that levies heavy in the summer, and then come here and they see that we levy heavy in the winter. So it's just kind of where you come from and how the municipality operates. So yeah, winter includes all the school, community college, police, fire, county, libraries, and special assessments. Now, if you look over, I want to break down some of these individual millages, especially the acronyms, because I do get a lot of questions on those. For example, the county NAT area, that is the Natural Areas Preservation Program. So the county distributes that money to them, which they in turn purchase and protect natural areas in Washtenaw County. According to their website, they have secured and protected over 9,100 acres since 2000, and that millage is renewed every 10 years. County EECS is the Enhanced Emergency Communication System. So that is money that goes to the county, which they then distribute to construct and upgrade emergency siren towers and that infrastructure. The county HCMA is the Huron-Clinton Metropolitan Authority, and that is capital improvements in operation of our local metro parks, such as Delhi, Hudson Mills, and Dexter Huron. And lastly is WWRA debt and operating. I believe almost all parcels in the township do pay that millage. That is the Western Washtenaw Recycling Authority, as we all know. And that funds our recycling operations here at the township. So our recycling bins that you see out there. And so now that I've kind of broken those down, we will not be seeing those on our upcoming winter bill. They will still be levied. However, the county has requested that we condense anything that says county, so parks, natural area, EECS, HCMA, vet relief, and roads will be condensed into one line item. The reason why they're doing that is kind of unknown. I suspect it is easier for them to process our settlement.
Yeah.
Maybe you could vouch for that.
Yeah, no, that's what, I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
Makes it more
Yeah.
streamlined, less mistakes, less error.
Yep.
But there's going to be a lot more questions I have.
So yeah, there will be a lot more questions. Those taxes are still being levied. They're just going to be under one line item. It'll probably be Washtenaw County or something to that effect.
Yeah.
Other than that, I mean, that's pretty much.
Matt, can I ask, what is LIVED?
That is Livingston.
Oh, it's a Livingston County?
Yes,
Yeah,
it's
so-
Livingston County. Yeah, this particular tax bill is Pinckney Schools.
See, and that's the thing too, that what I was going to point out is everybody's tax bills are going to look different. This is just an example, but depending on where you live, you're going to be paying for different schools, obviously. You're going to be paying for different special assessments that you can see, but I can't give examples for all of those. But essentially, when we set up a tax bill in December, or before December, but before we release it, this is what we're doing. We're getting all the L4029s, which are the millage rates that you see there in the center. We're getting L4029 forms that we vote on ours for the township, but we collect all of these, and according to Chris's tax database of all the parcels, we put together each person's tax bill of what millage rates and what what they're going to be paying for, including special assessments. And we receive the special assessment, and we upload that, and therefore then we could create everybody's tax bills. And then I wanted to point out too that, so essentially, you know, our statutory duty is to collect and disperse taxes. I handed out the pie chart here, and that basically shows you Dexter Township and the money that we collect throughout the year, what percentage of, now I'm having issues, of what money goes where. And as you can see, township operating, we are only collecting 2% of all the money that is collected. So essentially, we're collecting for the county, and then the county is turning that over to the state. So yeah, we don't really collect a whole lot of money here in Dexter Township.
I would say, what, 2/3 of that, or at least, are going to education, colleges,
Yes,
local schools?
yeah.
Yeah, Matt coded, everything in blue is education. So And then you can see that the green is police and fire, and then, Washtenaw County. So we are really a tiny piece of this pie.
And maybe we have discussed a little bit about, possibly, lowering our township millage rate, but in the grand scheme of things, I don't think that it would make much of a difference to do so. It would hurt us, and then, to not have the resources of things that we want to accomplish here in the township.
We might save, let's say we targeted to save $200,000 in taxes, which would be on behalf of the people, the residents, which would be a huge budget cut for us, and it would save like $7 per parcel on average. So the fiscal impact on the individuals in the township would be very minimal, and the fiscal impact on us would be huge. So
We don't have much control over lowering taxes, in other words,
yeah,
for
I mean,
the
that's a
township
good way to
residents.
put it.
Yeah.
We don't have much control over it because most of the taxes don't come to us.
Correct. And we are distributing, so as we're collecting, we start collecting July. Sorry, Gretchen, did you want to ask a question? Go ahead.
No, but I did have a comment.
Yeah.
I saw this on your newsletter.
Yeah.
I thought it was really good and really effective because I think everybody thinks when they pay taxes here, we get all of it.
Yeah.
And I think that we can't do this enough. Like,
Yeah.
I think this is a conversation we need to continue to have with our citizens, that most of it doesn't come here, even though that's where they write the check. So like having this outside the window where you take money and stuff, just any way to like make it.
That's a great
clear.
idea, actually.
Yeah,
Karen was the one that, had requested the pie chart and wanted, us to be able to show, which was a stellar idea. And then Matt put this beautiful pie chart together. So I can't take any credit for that. It's these two right here. But yeah, I mean, it was a great visual, a
The
great
other
idea.
picture that you can do is like a dollar bill and do like a dollar bill, and underneath the percentages of what $1 goes to the township versus the other taxing
Definitely,
entities.
definitely.
Because a picture really helps a lot of
Yeah.
people that don't like
Dollar
numbers
bills to sign, to
and
skip.
percentages, so.
Those numbers will fluctuate slightly year to year, so I'll revise that every year.
But I mean,
do-
2% to 3%, it's still negligible, right? So I think that a lot of citizens think when they write this big fat check to the township that we're spending their money, and it's really
Exactly.
not very much.
Well, and the other thing people should understand, I think the trustees understand, but the public should understand the mandated function of the township, collection and disbursement of taxes, running the elections, and then doing the planning and the zoning, making land use decisions. Those are the mandated functions. And all the discretionary functions like local roads, recycling, community cleanup, all those other things that we're doing, all that comes out of this tiny little piece of the pie that we have, and we're mandated to give a priority to those core functions. And the secondary functions are by definition lower priority from a funding perspective.
Anybody have any more questions?
Yeah, anybody have any questions? I don't know if
This is really helpful.
I did give you guys, and we don't have to go through this now, but there is a little bit of information on uncapping. I know Chris is going to touch on a lot of the assessing side of this, but I think sometimes people get confused because I get a lot of questions with people upset that newly moved to the township and they don't understand about, home value increases. Then also, when they get uncapped, it's not immediate, it's the following year. So then they're calling a year later like, why are my taxes all of a sudden just sky high? So I put a printout here for everybody if they want to look. And it breaks it down nice and simple.
This will be a good segue into.
Yeah, segue into the assessor himself.
Do you do, can I ask another
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you do like a welcome packet to new residents?
You know what, Abby put one together, our former office manager, she did, but I
Maybe
think
the
that,
uncapping and this, you could put these together.
yeah.
Like
put all-
on-
yeah,
like
this
a
should be-
I think we need to revise the welcome packet. I'll work, maybe Sam, you and I can work on revising it. Oh, did you? Of course you did.
Because she's
You're a
the
rock star.
author. Yeah.
Of course she did.
So I know that we didn't pass out this stuff in advance, and
Thank you, Matt.
if any members of the public would like to have copies of these things, just let us know. Chris,
Thank you.
welcome.
Thank you for having me. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Chris Rainius. I'm the assessor of Dexter Township. I've been the assessor since 2007. Some of you I've met, some of you have not, some I've talked with you on the phone. However, I've been here for going on 15 years, and so far so good.
And
No.
can I interrupt you for a minute and say that Chris's presentation starts on page 9 in the packet, so he's going to be walking you through that. We're not going to show it.
Sure. So when I was asked to come to the board and give a presentation, this is very elementary, and if you want some in-depth or more information, just shout it out while we're going through this. These are some of the things that we get questioned on often in our process. So I guess we'll just start with my job. Well, I'll give you a little history about myself. I've been doing this for 25 years. I started in 1997 in Bedford Township, Monroe County, in the assessing department. I went from there into becoming an assessor, got certified in 1998. Got my first township in 1998. It was paper and pencil at that point in time. Didn't think I was going to be able to do it. Moved through college, got graduated. By 2003, we had 4 townships. At this current point, I think we service 23 cities and townships in 4 counties in Michigan. So we have quite a bit of experience with different types of properties. This is one of our larger townships. The other townships we have in Washtenaw is Lima Township and Lodi Township. This is the only other townships we have with water or big water, Lake Erie. Things of that nature. So when I have conversations with residents, a lot of these things that are in this PowerPoint are questions that they have. Some of it's not, some of it's just how we get from point A to point B type thing for you guys. But one of the questions I get often is, I paid this for this property, why isn't it worth that? Isn't that what you base the assessment on? And the answer to that is no. That's not the definition of market value in the state of Michigan. Market value is defined as the most likely sale price, not the sale price. So there's a process that we go through as assessors to determine what the most likely sale price is for property, even if it has sold. And it's not based upon the sale price. So the definition in the Constitution is the usual selling price at the price where the property to which the term is applied shall be at the time of assessment, being the price which could be obtained, therefore, at a private sale and not a forced or auction sale. So that was a big issue back in 08, 09, and 10 when we had a lot of foreclosure sales. We had to really vet the sales that were true arm's-length transactions versus those that were not. Assessed value is 50% of market value, or true cash value, as they call it. That's determined by the assessor on December 31st every year. That's tax day. So what I finalize on tax day of 2022 is what has turned into the tax bill that Meredith and Matt have sent out to everybody for 2023. So there's an appeal process, and I'm just going to touch briefly on some of these things. You all get an assessment notice from me every February-ish, beginning of February to middle of February. It outlines your property's description, the prior year's assessed value, prior year's taxable value, the change, what that means for you in tax dollars, and it gives the process to appeal. That appeal process is statutorily set, has to happen the same time every year. It begins the second Monday in March, right here at the township. We have a board of review of 3 members that are made up of constituents of the township that hear the appeals. When they're done with what they want to do, I pass all that information on to the county. Then county does county equalization with the county commissioners. When they're done with that, it goes to the state, and then in May, 4th Monday in May, the state tax commission adopts the state tax commission, which then solidifies those values for that current year. So that was like 3 slides in a second. So any questions on that, let me know. So how I value property, or any assessor for that matter, is we are not fee appraisers in the sense that you want to get a mortgage, you come to me and say, hey, I need an appraisal. We're mass appraisers. So we take data that comes to us within the township. We make determinations of value based on a mass scale. We apply land values equitably to properties that are in a particular geographical area. Same with multipliers that we develop based on sales to apply to all the properties in a similar fashion so it's equitable. And the 3 approaches to value are cost, market, and income approach. We don't have very many properties in this township that would be suitable for an income approach. We do have a couple of apartments, but they're minor in scale. But so we use a cost approach with a market integration to determine market value. So the costs are developed by the State Tax Commission on an annual basis and integrated into our program based on Marshall Swift and their studies they do on an annual basis. We integrate those, we take what has happened here, because the State Tax Commission manuals are uniform throughout the entire state. So to say what a 1,500 square foot ranch is valued here versus what's one valued in the UP, if it's just raw data, we can come up with the same number. But it's when we use the market integration to bring value to local market is what our job is. And so that's where we integrate what is sold, and we apply those factors uniformly to all the properties in a particular geographical area that we have determined through our expertise. So that we can skip through that. Anybody have any questions on valuation of properties, on how we get to that? I mean, it's not a simple process, but it's easy enough to understand that that's how we go through that. Then I go on, it talks about what types of sales we can
May I
use.
ask one quick question?
Yeah, sure.
As you're talking about mass approach versus individual approach, is that why, so what my assumption is, what you're saying then, is if somebody applies for a permit and does a master remodel on their home, the permit closes, you don't go out and reassess that house?
I do.
Oh, you do?
I do.
So after every permit that closes, you go reassess the house?
Even if they're not closed, I go. So Citus, December 31st, I have to have a status of the home on December 31st of every year. Not every permit will close by that date. So
Right.
we will then take a status of it on that date, or as close to that date as we can get, and make a determination of value based on what's there at that
So
time.
you do that for every house?
We do.
For every construction permit or every zoning
Yes,
permit or
zoning,
both?
Construction, all of
So
them.
you interact with CACA on those, you get all
We
that
do,
information
yes.
from
I,
CACA? Okay.
spoke with Devin this morning, actually.
Okay.
Can I ask you a question, Chris?
Yeah.
So, for instance, you came and assessed our barn, but it isn't completed because we're almost ready to get garage doors because you can't get garage doors right now for some reason. Will you come back because you know, or do I let you know?
No, so what happens, the process is I will get information, I was getting information from David,
Okay,
but I was also, what happens is that usually turns into a permit from CACA. I get all that information, all the plumbing, electrical, mechanical, building permits. So then I sort through those and visit. And any property that, so I have a system set up in my program that allows me to sort by permits that are open, permits that are partially complete, and permits that are closed. So ones that are closed, I don't need to visit any longer. Ones that are partially complete, I know I've already been there, so I'll go back and try to finish them out. And open are new, and then I need to visit those. And I try to hit the partials before I hit the end of the year ones, because typically if something's partial at the end of the year, by probably October, most of them will be complete. Some won't, but you never know.
When you reassess based on a permit, are you just adjusting the value? Does it uncap the whole property, or does so it's just as a change in value because of the specific improvement?
Sure, we'll get to that here in a little while when it comes to the taxable value calculation. So when I go out to a property, say they pulled a permit for a utility building, that change, if they did add that utility building, that valuation is the only addition I can make to not only the assessed value, but to the taxable value.
Okay.
So there's a specific calculation that we have to calculate each property's taxable value using, and that includes additions.
Okay, gotcha.
So-
Thank you.
So, one of the things that are not always understood in the world of assessing with the mass appraising is that we have statutory timelines in which we use sales to determine current year assessed value. So, for example, the 2023 year, the sales that we had to use to determine that those assessments was April 1 of 2020 to April 1 of 2022. So if you think about, by the time I send you your assessment notice in February, the oldest sale is almost 2 years old. So we can only look in the past. We don't have enough time to do something in a short order current market like an individual appraiser can. They can look at one property, get 3 to 5 comps, make a determinative value based on sales that have happened in 3 years. We're valuing 4,000 parcels at a time here. So that's why the time frame is such that we have to use. So it takes us 2 years to catch up to market. So when the crash happened in '08, people were still seeing increases in their value for 2 years after that happened. So that was a challenge. That was a challenge. But the same goes for when there's an increasing market. It takes us a couple years to catch up with that. So we're just now coming into the really explosive part of post-COVID real estate, the next 2 years. We're going to really see those increases kick in. Sorry. I mean, it's good and bad. It's, you know, it's a double-edged sword.
Big bummer.
But it's
Yeah.
capped, you're going to answer this, but it's capped at 5% because of Headley, right? So,
For most.
yeah.
But can you put that in the newsletter? Because I think that's really important.
So I have a brochure. I do have that brochure, Maris, that I need to update. And, I mean, it's 2 pages long, but it really details all of this information with graphs, a chart, what happens if you
I just think the
purchase.
time lag thing
Yeah.
because the market's been crazy since
Yeah.
2020, and people are going to be like, even though it is a cap, your board of review is going to be crazy
Sure.
if we don't, just like 1,
Educate.
2 sentences maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, not a problem.
Are you
Yeah.
the newsletter person? Oh, great. Nice to meet you.
Info at
If you choose to
dextertownship.org.
write something,
And that's why and Gretchen, that's part of why we're having these guys here, because we're launching this kind of public information about
Cool,
this. Yeah.
okay, great.
Great, it's great feedback.
So back in '08, they didn't implement a 1-year study, but the 1-year study can only be utilized if there's a decreasing market. So if we were to say, next year, all of a sudden, my assessment's at X, but the sales are starting to show up at Y, then we would possibly look at doing a 1-year study to reflect closer to what the market's doing. But it's only can be utilized on a downward market. So the time frame then would be from October 1 for next year, if it was for 2024, it'd be October 1 of 22 to October 1 of 23. The problem with that is then you start limiting the number of sales you have. So we've seen sales slow down. We haven't seen values drop. And I suspect the slowdown in sales is simply one, people are going to always have to move regardless, whether it's 7% interest or not. The values have not really come down. I had 2 sales I put in today that I'm still, $80,000 less than what they paid for it. So we're still seeing that incremental increase over what our current, assessed value is. Because remember, we're based 2 years ago. So we're still showing, but today's value versus what our assessment was based on 2 years ago sales still has a gap.
So you see me looking puzzled. So you entered a sale today where the sale price was 80,000 lower than the purchase price?
Above.
Okay. I thought you said
The
lower.
purchase price was above our assessed
Okay.
value.
Okay.
And that's still happening.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
it's not, it hasn't relented.
Yeah.
So,
so that's really the reason, and I'm thinking about how I'm going to write this to the public.
sure.
So the real reason when we're looking at our tax bills, and usually your assessed value is 50%, but it's usually under what your true value is because we're running the 2 years behind.
Correct.
Gotcha.
So we're always looking
I
at the
can
past.
explain that.
Well, it's that plus Headley, right?
That's a whole different
Yeah,
thing, which you
yeah.
just asked about assessed value. So
Okay.
taxable is a
Okay.
different item.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
but you're absolutely right.
Okay,
Yep.
now I know how to explain that. Thank you.
Sure. So we'll move on to taxable value. So assessed value is what we say 50% of market value is. That is, taxable value was created with the passage of Proposal A in 1994. I don't know how many of you recall that. But that was a huge change in the Constitution for taxation purposes. It was the first election I ever voted in. I didn't even own a home, but I was told by my parents, you're going to vote for this. So before Proposal A, the assessed value dictated your tax liability. So in markets like this, 10, 15, 20% increase in market value meant 10, 15, 20% increases in your taxes. That was problematic in the early 90s. So the Constitution was amended to put in these 2 new numbers, SEV, which we've always had, taxable value, which is now the number used to determine your tax liability. The basis of that was 1995. So anybody who's owned their home since then, their taxable value has only increased on an annual basis by the Consumer Price Index as determined by the Bureau of Labor Statistics in Washington on an annual basis, or 5%, whichever's less. We just hit the first time in 29 years, 5%. It's always averaged around 2.5%. 2023 was 5%. The calculated CPI was 7.9. We're going to have 5% again next year because it's a 2-year rolling average, and so it's going to encompass 2021 through 2023, October of 21 to 2023. So we'll probably see 5% again next year on the taxable value. Thank goodness for the cap, though. Taxable value cannot be greater than the state equalized value. Statutorily, that's unconstitutional. So there's only a couple of times where taxable value can increase over the annual inflation increase. 1, transfer of ownership. 2, new construction. So statute says the year after a transfer of ownership is defined by law, the assessed value and taxable value must become the same. So we have instances where people's taxes will quadruple in a year. I mean, it's not uncommon. You have somebody that has had a cottage on Portage Lake in their family for 50 years, and they finally say, you know, we're going to sell it. They sell it for $500,000. The taxable value is $50,000. Guess what? Their tax bill goes from $50,000 to $250,000. That's a substantial increase in tax dollars. Statutory. There's nothing I can do about it, nothing the Board of Review can do about it. It would take a constitutional amendment to change that. The Board of Review gets that question a lot. We get a lot of people that come in. Yeah, Maris. Yeah. And she made a valid point, which a lot of people don't understand. So I buy a property in January of this year. My taxes are the same for this entire year as the previous owner. Next year, they uncap. First tax bill doesn't come out until July. My mortgage company gets that July bill. Then they get the December bill. They pay them. They send me a mortgage analysis for my escrow account in March or April the following year saying you were deficient $8,000 in your escrow account because we had to pay $4,000 extra in taxes you didn't have in your escrow, and we have to make up for next year. It's 2 years after the fact. So that's problematic. A lot of realtors don't disclose that information, even though people do sign that documentation at closing with the other 1,000 things they sign. It's problematic. We don't know what the answer is to that because it's just the mechanisms in statute that cause that to happen. A lot of people don't call and ask us either. We always thank the people that do because it saves us a problematic phone call in the future. So does anybody have questions on taxable value? So the last thing I guess I need to discuss, or we need to discuss here, is the millage rate reduction fraction. So I prepare the L4029 for the township. The county equalization department prepares the L4028 form, which is the Headley calculation for us, and we just verify what it is. Because the inflation was high this year, nobody got a millage rate reduction fraction in Washtenaw County, therefore we can levy the same millage rates in 2024 or 2023 as we did in 2022. So what Headley's intent is the township cannot collect a greater amount in taxes than what inflation would allow. So if we start collecting, so when we had, 2019, 2020, we had inflation was 1.4. If our taxes, our taxable value is greater than that 1.4, say 2.5, there's a calculation that we have to perform to determine how much we have to reduce our millage rate so that we're not collecting more than what inflation allows us to collect. So that's what Headley is. That was passed in the 80s. So that's been on the books for some time. So this year, as you can see, I did the calculation for you. We were above 1. Unfortunately, Headley did not allow for us to increase our millage rate. If our calculation is above 1, it's limited to only decrease, so we can't increase.
But just to clarify, if we accepted from that, this is not looking at our overall tax collection, it's just looking at the percent increase. So in other words, if we add to our housing base, or we have uncappings, or we have home improvements, those may result in our overall tax collection exceeding inflation.
But if you look at the calculation, it removes those. It removes anything that is, say, demolition, so it doesn't include that, and it removes anything that is new, or additions, new homes, all that. So the calculation is raw based on those things, not using those items and using the losses.
And that's one of the reasons why we use Chris to do our general fund revenue forecast for budgetary purposes, rather than just looking at last year's and doing an inflationary increase, because the inflationary increase is almost by definition, at least in today's market, is going to undercount it, because we're adding to we're adding to the number of houses, and market values are increasing and all of that, so we've gone on cappings. So that's just to explain why I don't just, the supervisor doesn't just add, 5% or whatever to last year's.
And to be fair, the Headley calculation had to use the 7.9%. We're limited in our tax value increase at 5%, but because the statute says we have to use the consumer price index, which was calculated at 7.9, right there, it's already that we're going to have no Headley rollback, because we can't use that 5% for the calculation. It has to be the 7.9.
Yeah.
So, I
Go ahead.
hate Headley. Not the person, but this whole thing.
Sure.
But if it was 4% inflation, then there would be a rollback, right?
It's quite possible. I would have to do the calculation, because I'd have to take what the prior year's taxable value minus losses divided by the current year's taxable value minus
That's why I hate
additions.
it, never mind.
I know.
Yeah, so I mean, it
It's
all
really
depends on
complicated.
what the values are.
And everybody knows Gretchen's a CPA, and she
No,
still
I'm
hates
not.
it.
I was a long time. So, my other question, isn't it kind of redundant to have the Headley and Prop A?
Well,
Because they're both talking about inflation, and they both control it and have a controlling mechanism, so it's actually a detriment to township ability to collect revenues, right?
so I don't speak much to legislation, because I don't get to make legislation. So I just carry out the duties that they put in front of me to perform, because I could speculate in a lot of places that we have a lot of redundancies or could do better in multiple facets of government.
Sure.
But it would seem that, well, there's a couple of things that came to light. If we go
Good
back
answer,
to the
Chris.
crash, 2008, when everybody's tax base was shrinking exponentially, there was no mechanism for us to make that up.
Right.
So had they allowed Headley to work the other way, have it work both ways. When we're increasing our tax base, then our mills rate shrinks. But when our tax base is shrinking, then we can increase our mills rate back up to what, statutory allowed to. But that's not the case. So, but I agree with you that it's a double-edged sword.
Okay. Thank you.
Chris, I just wanted to add that the assessor is a mandated functions of townships, but the assessor doesn't report to the township, so we're mandated to have an assessor and pay an assessor, but Chris actually reports to the State Department of Treasury, and that is to ensure that the assessment is independent, basically.
Sure, I do report to the board. I mean, I am hired by the board, so will be the person next behind me, the next person behind me. But all of our functions come through statute, and that's who supplies us with our certification, and if we don't, they take it, and then you get the next one, so, it's,
So I should have said accountable, probably say,
Yeah, it's
but
all-
it's
yeah.
more fair to say that you're accountable
we
to
all
the
work
State
in
Department.
conjunction with each other,
Yeah.
for sure.
Does anybody else have questions for Chris? Or Matt? So you guys, I can see what an awesome team we have doing tax collection, disbursement and assessment in the township. And
Well, it's the thing is we work the closest together, the Treasurer's Department, and we really have to mesh and work closely together to make everything work smoothly, because where I start and where they end has to add up from point A to point B, and if we don't, there's issues, and so far, we've done well.
Great. Well, thank you, guys.
Can I ask
Thank
one?
you.
Really appreciate it.
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
Okay, so, and this has just been on my mind for a while, and this would be a treasurer question too, probably. So, you have your home for 40 years. You haven't had a mortgage for 20 years. You want to go ahead and get a mortgage on that property. would the property then be reassessed to today's market value? So it would go up like a new, because more or less to get a mortgage or a home equity line of credit, a realtor would come in, someone would come in, and they would, see the property value.
We don't work in conjunction with them. So
Okay.
our operation is completely independent from an individual appraiser or a mortgage company, so we don't take any of that into consideration.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Anything else? Thanks for having me.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate
This
it.
was awesome. Thank you, Maris.
And I'm sorry I'm gonna miss your after meeting discussion tomorrow. So I'm usually here on Wednesdays.
Oh,
If you
yeah,
need me,
right.
I'm here on Wednesdays. I was here today because I have a haul home. I live down in Lambertville, so.
Yeah, and you got to see the board meeting yourself, so,
Well, it's supposed to be nicer tomorrow too, so I
Yeah.
can get on golf.
yeah.
There you
We-
Thank you all.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, very helpful.
Yeah.
Thanks, Matt.
Chris is referring
Thank you,
to,
Matt. Yeah.
These two are the dynamic duo.
they're awesome, yeah.
I look like you. Yeah,
I was trying to describe one of them to Rick, like, oh, he was the guy, like, and then I realized they look alike. when you
Yeah.
describe- So, yeah. So next up, Pat Cassidy is here. Pat is actually a member of the Local Roads Committee, but he also happens to be an HR consultant. And so I tapped him to see if he would help with the board for several years has been asking for a compensation policy that would underlie the request for pay increases annually. And so I had this great resource on the board, and in fact, on the local roads committee, and in fact, Pat, you offered, you said to me, I would be happy.
Yeah, I offered to do it for free, so theoretically.
He offered to do it for free, and I was like, but he said, I just retired 6 months ago from this, and I was like, well, then you're fresh,
You're still in the know.
And so what I found by poking around on our shared drive was that there was already in place a personnel policy, and so Pat and I met. We went through. He brought me a bunch of documentation and kind of explained in broad brushstrokes a lot of the concepts that we would be trying to include in this compensation policy, and that was a great meeting. I then went back to my desk and put those changes into the compensation policy, and I tracked the changes. So while this board hasn't seen that prior personnel policy, it was nevertheless an approved policy of the Board of Trustees, and so I wanted you to see what the original policy was and then what the amendments we were proposing might be. But I do want to, and then I ran it back by Pat. Pat gave me a few more comments. I made those changes, and then I sent it to Sinead, and she shared it with the employment division at Bodman, and I just got her comments back today. So I thought tonight, because we're not going to be approving this policy tonight, but we're going to be coming back to you to ask you to approve a policy, maybe in September, maybe in October, and at that time, we're also going to come back with the pay range proposal that's going to be based on benchmark data. So I just wanted to kind of give you the broad brush strokes of what we're proposing the policy to be, the compensation policy, and then tell you that I haven't looked at the attorney's comments yet, so this may change a little bit, and then collect any questions that you have and make sure that the policy we do write reflects all the concerns and priorities of the board. And so, Pat, do you want me to go through these bullet points, or do you want to go through these? These are the bullet points that I showed you. They're in the package.
Well, there's just a couple takeaways that I saw in this policy manual. One thing that I look at, instead of saying policy, I say guidelines.
Yeah.
And let me give you an illustration why I make a distinction between the two. So if you say that you're going to have an annual compensation review, if something happens and it's 13 months, you're now in violation of your policy. But if the guideline is annual, then things may happen that you're going to be pushing it out. The other thing that may happen like what's been happening this last year, hyperinflation in wages. So we said, well, we're going to have an annual review. We're not going to do anything between now and then, and so you're going to be losing your quality people because they're saying, well, I can go down the road and get a 25% increase. So now you have a policy in place and it says you're going to do an annual review. Well, you're kind of stuck within your policy guideline. It gives you a little more flexibility. The other thing that I liked in that particular document, there was an executive committee that involved 3 individuals. So I like compensation reviewed by more than one individual. And so there can be some biases that an individual may have, but if you get more than one person, that you're going to eliminate some of those biases. So maybe not all. In any event, my background in this particular area, I've been doing compensation planning for 40 years. I've done it in a variety of systems. One that's called the HAY system, which is very detailed. I've done mostly market value. And I've done market value in public forums such as United Dairy Industry of Michigan. I've done it with the Howell Chamber of Commerce, those like public sector, but mostly private sector. The concept is the same. And when you get into there, there's that one aspect that talks about a midpoint value. Because you're going to be going through survey data, it's never exact. And you want to have some room to maneuver in the midpoint value, and that would be for a fully competent individual. So if a person's fully competent, there's a variety of factors. So as you move up in terms of the skill level, so if you go from a clerk to a clerk's going to go through cycles numerous times in the course of a year and may be fully competent in 1 year. A manager may be fully competent in 3 years because they're going through cycles in a longer duration, more complex. So the survey data will tell you approximately what that midpoint value is, and then you have a 96 to 103, which is the midpoint value. You have a larger range, goes from 80 to 120% of that midpoint value. So it allows you to pay for exceptional performance, sustained acceptable performance or sustained average performance, whatever it may be, it gives you those type of opportunities. So when you're looking at that document, that's kind of the essence of a compensation program. You got to have some flexibility because things happen, as we have seen this last year. And if you're too rigid, that's going to be a problem. Now, having an attorney here, an attorney will say, don't deviate from your process. So you don't want to deviate from your process because that's where you get into problems with lawsuits. And you don't want a lawsuit for something that you're trying to have some flexibility. So going back to what I talked about, you got the 3 individuals that will be reviewing it, and then they'll bring it to the board. So you've got a number of eyes looking at it to make sure that there's no discrimination involved, no favoritism, that things appear to be sound, the judgment is sound. I'm trying to remember if we spoke of...
Well, go ahead.
Did we speak of other things besides that?
No, I mean, I think you captured them, and the only other thing I would say is that as far as a benefits proposal is concerned, we're still working on that, so I'm not proposing anything, and what we're doing is researching what the options are, and in particular, we're looking at retirement and health benefits and what we have the ability to provide and what the market would be, and Maris and I are going to meet with a MERS person, the state retirement person. Sam has been talking with a health insurance broker, and so we're going to try to be developing proposal, and then Pat is going to also help me, you promised, looking at these benchmark data and then helping me actually set those ranges. And I think but the kind of critical thing, I guess, one of the things I wanted to share with you guys is that the prior board was using a step system, that's a very standard kind of governmental system of setting compensation, but it's very rigid, and it typically sets compensation based only on time in the role. So there's no discretion based on, there's no possibility of equity adjustments, which means, if somebody adds to their you're working as an accountant, but you get a CPA, you can't get bumped up from step 3 to step 4 necessarily, because step 3, you've been in the role for 2 years, and in 2 years, you're at step 3 or whatever. So this is really providing a range that is not based at all on time in the role, other than time in the role contributing to competency in the role. So the expectation is that, after a couple of years, the person's going to be competent, let's say, and so they're going to be at the midpoint at that point. But it's not a mandated salary increase based on time in the role. It really takes into effect, the two primary things it's taking into account are market and competencies, up to a maximum.
So for elected officials versus the staff members, it has to be different though, correct? Because elected officials and staff members, I think that are kind of, do you see where I'm going with this? It's just, it seems like that would be different. They would only be not based on competency because we could change, right? And I think that's what's weird about the whole thing, is that if, say you have a stellar supervisor in the role and she's so smart, or and they deserve, they deserve like $50,000 a year, right? Because right now we're at what, 40, something like that. But this person honestly deserves 40,000. You bump that person up, that can never get lowered because they're an elected official.
Yeah.
Where do you go with that? Do you just base,
I know where you go with that. So some of the things that you can look at in that specific case. This location is unique because of the proximity to Ann Arbor. So you're competing with employment from Ann Arbor. So you can't be just an isolated, say, well, we're a township, we're this size, and we're not competing with township this big, and so on. You have to be mindful of where you are. So if you have someone that is performing above and beyond, they may fit within the range, and you can decide you want to do a bonus. So that's how you can approach some of these things.
I don't know that elected officials are allowed to have bonuses, though,
Yeah.
actually.
I don't either. It's something
don't
that would
think
have to
so.
be a legal review on that, but
I think it's a great question, and I do know that some local government jurisdictions have a compensation committee that is specifically dedicated to elected officials, because it is very difficult to set your own compensation in a public
Absolutely.
forum. And what I'm basically doing, and what I wanted to do this month, is write down all your excellent questions and then come back to you with a proposal. And I don't think we know the answer to that right now. So I think, and it may be contained in the advice of Bodman Employment, but I'm going to add this to the list: is how do we treat? And to my mind, I was not thinking about elected officials at all.
It actually just occurred to me as we were talking about that.
I was only thinking about staff salary setting, and I want to get away from debating individual people's salary at a public meeting, and instead set these ranges, and then set the guidelines for where we place people within the range, and then we're not publicly talking about staff performance.
Yeah.
And so I really had staff in mind for this, and I will just add that to the list of, okay, we've got to think. My question that I'm adding to my own personal list, but I'll say it because I want it to be on the record, is I don't want to do a benchmark study every year to set the range. And so we didn't talk about cost of living increases, or, and so I want to add that to the list. Like, I would like to have a provision in there that says, we're going to reset the range every 5 years based on a market study or something. You're shaking your head, so that's the wrong thing. But my point is, I don't want to have to do a benchmark study every year, so I want to have some way of doing a COLA increase.
typically, salary ranges are reviewed every 3 years.
Okay,
And I say typically because, again, you have to take a look at what's happening in your region. And nationwide, there's a lot of things that can go into that factor on whether you want to do it more often or less often. So reviewing the salary ranges, the standard protocol is about every 3 years.
okay. And then you have something in there about cost of living increases, So
Yeah.
we'll talk about that, but that's like on my list is, okay, how do I talk about cost of living? And so I don't have to do the benchmark study every 3 years.
So your survey data that you have is of a variety of townships, correct? That's what you have access to?
Yeah, and I don't know if we have access to that, well, yes, there's a Michigan Township Association benchmark survey, and to get access to that, we just have to complete our own survey, and I don't know if we did complete the survey this year, but that's an easy one that we can pull data out of. So that's easy, we don't have to collect our own data, but if we want to know that the benchmark, the data is anonymous, and so one of the challenges of that is you can't, it's all the membership of the Michigan Township Association, so you don't know whether they're all UP respondents or what, you know. You can do a little bit with, we can look at, I can talk to you about it, because you can set the query parameters to try to make the responses more similar to your own jurisdiction, but then you're really getting very few data points. So
You could use both. Like you could use the MTA benchmark and then local.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. That's what we're proposing to do, and we've collected some local, but I just don't want to do that every year, that's all I'm saying. Yeah. I mean, I could do the MTA every year because it's easy, it's just a
Well,
query.
it's not, but I think our county's a little unique to your point about Ann Arbor.
Yeah, so I like the idea of every 3 years or something, and then we just have some provision for annual increases that's tagged to inflation or something, you know? So,
So we're at the infancy of this whole process. So from what I understand, you wanted me here just to say, we're looking at this from 10,000 feet right now, and we're going to be getting closer and closer for future meetings. So it's really, I guess, the first step is reviewing the policy, procedure, guideline, whatever we want to call it today until it's approved, and that we go from there. And then we can layer it in from that point.
yeah, that sounds good.
I have a question
Go
too.
ahead.
I think I already know the answer, but are the other sections in here aside from compensation? Are we doing this as an overall policy? Like as I read through some of it, there are plenty of other things in here that I would like to update that are not necessarily reflective of, let's say, my values or what I would assume a lot of the community's values are. Are we opening up the entire thing for comments, or are we only looking at compensation?
I say yes, and Sinead asked me, do you want us just to review your additions, or do you want us to review the whole thing? And I said, what do you think I should have you do? And she said, well, it's not for me to say, however, we did notice some things that might be problematic. Yeah.
I am going to sit down right now and discuss about other things, but I'm going to stay right here.
Thank you. Okay. And Pat, I mean, it's another great volunteer, and
Thank you.
and
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so
Have a
much.
Personnel committee.
Very appreciative.
I mean, are you interested?
Well, I mean, just like.
Just raise your hand. You don't open your mouth in the board
Personnel,
meeting.
and then to Maris's point, I do think that the electeds also deserve an evaluation, and other communities have a local officers' compensation committee
Yes.
that is arm's length, so it's not the people that is being impacted, it's citizens, and they do a very similar study that shows what other people, other officers in other townships, very similar, but it's not done by this board. It would be done.
Pat, I see an opportunity for you to chair a
Yeah,
new
so,
committee.
because I think it's important that, you want good quality people to
Yes.
run for office.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
some
Yeah.
people are sacrificing another job. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know the time commitment because
Yeah.
I'm new to this, but
Yeah.
it seems that the officers in particular, it's a full-time job.
Yeah.
Or could be.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I think that needs to be taken into account. And
Yeah, I like that.
so hard.
so it's just.
I do like the idea
We
of
could put
a.
under under strategic, your
Yeah.
strategic planning conversation that, like the whole personnel.
Yeah.
I mean, so for me personally, I feel like it's super important to have talent on your board and in your township hall.
Yeah.
And that's the way you have a really good government and you have good public service for our residents. So.
I agree with you.
So in light of that value, for me personally, I think what you're trying to do is really important. And I think what you said, Lonnie, too, is, that we need to have our policies right and current.
But I think, Gretchen, if I'm hearing you right, I think you're talking about the overall personnel policy, which pertains primarily to employees, not to elected officials. And you're talking about having a committee to
The office.
to study
compensation.
an arm's length
Like an
committee,
elected.
not comprised of elected officials,
Right.
with no elected officials on it, that will come to the board and make
Right.
recommendations for our
Right.
compensation. And so those are two things on my to-do list, basically. And so what I'd say to you, these are two things that I do want to pursue, that I think we should do. And I think, yes, you should review that and red flag anything, but you might want to wait until after I look at the legal review, because some of those things that you're looking at, they may have flagged and I may be changing anyway. So before you do the work of giving comments that I may already be getting, let me get you an updated policy, and then you look at the updated policy, get your comments to me. And I can't remember if I said this was going to be for September or October, but I'm thinking, based on this, that probably October, because in September, we're going to be looking at bylaws, board rules, and that's another kind of deep policy dive, and I don't want to try to do those two things at the same meeting. So let's do this in October or maybe even November. But we'll also raise. I will also put this on the. I have a list of ideas that have been raised over the past couple of years that are going to, for our strategic planning session. So we've got, the things we said we would do at the original strategic planning session, what has been accomplished, what hasn't been accomplished, and we'll be saying, okay, this list that isn't complete, are they still priorities or not? And then what are we going to add to that? Is there anything we want to add to this list? And I already have a kind of running list of things to add to the list that are ideas that you guys have proposed subsequent to the 2021, and that will go on that list, and I'll be asking everybody's going to get dots, and there's going to be a dot exercise, and you're going to be telling us how high a priority all these items are, and you're going to get little sticky notes too, and you can add new things, and people will prioritize those as well. So that will go. Your idea of a compensation committee or is going to go on that strategic planning list. Your idea probably not, Lonnie, because that's just more like a review of the policy. And Karen, you had gotten in touch with me in advance to ask about nepotism, because this board has talked before about having a nepotism policy, and I believe, and I just quickly talked to Sinead ahead of the meeting, that would go in the board rules, but we can talk about, but I'll talk with Sinead a little more about that, and we'll look at the board. I have a draft of that Bodman provided me of board rules, and we'll look at it and see if there's nepotism in there and talk about whether it belongs here or there, or maybe in both places, I don't know. So that's on the list too.
I just want to make sure that first, thank you. I really appreciate getting this in advance. I think that all of these things are big items, and the earlier we get to see them and have that conversation before we're actually trying to dig in and vote on them is helpful. So I just want to make sure. I'm going to wait until we get an updated version from Bodman, and then we'll dig in from Karen.
Yeah.
And then we'll
and if you
dig
want,
into the changes.
Yeah, and I just got the Bodman comments today, and if you want, I can forward them just to you, because I welcome any second set of eyes on everything for me, because it just improves the quality, I think. So I would be happy. I will forward the Bodman comments to you, and if you have time to look at it and you're interested in diving in, great. If not, I'm no worse off than I was. So I'll forward that to you specifically tomorrow, but I was planning to come back to the board, the full board, with another iteration of this policy that integrated those Bodman comments.
Okay.
So we
Yeah, I
don't-
think that. Sorry, go ahead, Laura.
Just so we don't ask the questions that we have today.
You can go ahead and ask them, and I'll add them to the list. That was my idea, was to add.
That's what I'm not.
Yeah. I'm trying to add questions.
I mean, these are really, like, look, you want feedback or questions on specific things? Not right now, or are you waiting? I guess I have the same question that Lonnie does. Are we waiting for a new draft of it?
We're not going to approve the policy
Right.
tonight, and so what I was trying to do tonight is like collect your kind of big
Yeah.
thoughts and make sure that I'm on track and meeting your needs. And when I come back, I'm going to come back with another iteration of this policy. And I want to make sure that next iteration includes your concerns.
Okay.
So if you have concerns right now, tell me what
Well,
they are.
I have, on page 37, I don't understand the distinction around abortion that is stated on page 37.
Around abortion?
Yeah, medical condition that does not include non-therapeutic abortion not intended to save the life of the mother.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, that's probably flagged by Bodman. I got to tell you, I didn't even read this, so I wasn't focused on, I did not read the complete policy.
Okay, well, that's what
Yeah,
I mean, like,
yeah.
okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those are we're on the same page,
Yeah.
Laura. These are
Yeah.
the things that I want to,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, no, I didn't, all I
Yes.
was doing was focused on adding to the policy, and I did see something about you can't eat in front of people, so I struck that, but I didn't notice the thing about abortion.
Hey, Karen?
Yeah.
Is there anything else you need me for here?
No, Pat, thank you so much. Yeah, this was awesome, I really appreciate your help, yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
Thank you,
Okay,
Pat.
thank you.
Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's on page 37.
Okay, yes, I'll be looking at
Line
that.
4.
On page 37 of the overall package.
Line 4, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you have other, yeah, I
have
want.
a few, I mean, but
Yeah.
I don't know if, that's what I mean, this might be.
I mean, did you write them down?
I marked
I
them.
think we should talk about right here.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to
Yeah.
get everybody's input. I mean, that's the whole
Yeah,
point.
go ahead and tell me what else
Well,
you
to
had
have other
flagged.
people respond first, I'll find mine.
Did you flag anything else specifically, Lonnie, that you wanted to?
I have flagged a few, I guess,
Tell me
40,
the page number.
45 of the actual packet. It's 14 of 30 of the policy. Just jury duty. So calculate, and maybe this is what we want to stay with, but paying only the difference between compensation
Oh my
and what
gosh.
they're paid
Yeah.
for jury duty, as opposed to just giving paid time off for jury duty. There's a lot of things like that that are just, that I've kind of marked that are,
Kind of
I think,
costly.
outdated.
Yeah.
And again, if we're competing with other, like Ann Arbor, and we're going to need to really make our policies a little more progressive than.
It's pretty interesting to think of what the old policy was.
Yes. Same thing with like voting. I flagged that one on page 47.
You have to vote in your own time.
Vote on your own time. How about we give them an hour to vote? You know, like, or two.
Okay.
Like, I just,
Thanks for reading this, you guys.
That was funny voting on your own.
yeah. And I have plenty of others, but I think like it'd be better just to see what Bodman updates and then can go back through.
Yeah, yeah.
I wondered.
I assumed.
I wondered on page 52, about, under this whole area of disciplinary actions, which kind of makes me a little nervous. I mean, there's a whole bunch, a big old list. But I was wondering about discussing inappropriate or destructive social media use. It doesn't seem to, I think it's a little outdated in that it doesn't address social media.
Okay.
And I think that probably we should, not that I am big on disciplinary action, but there should probably be something said about appropriate use of social media in regards to the township.
Yeah.
Just another one to flag if we're doing that. Page 55, the dress code.
Oh, yeah.
I don't.
I think we've done away with that already.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, does anybody have time to work on this? Because now, to plan the strategic planning session, the new board rules, if anybody has time to kind of go through this and.
I'm happy to dig into the changes, and I will just do the same thing you did as suggested changes
Yeah.
that are tracked.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that other board members
Yeah.
agree.
Well, absolutely, yeah.
I may have lots of super progressive things to throw in, so we'll.
If I can
see
say
if it-
something too, like kind of like
What
we're doing
does
for the
the-
master
yeah.
plan,
Yeah.
and can Monty be maybe the point person and we can all kind of review it? I mean, we did anyways, but and just send our comments to him so he can compile him in addition to his. And
Are you okay with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, that's
To
fine.
have someone other than me to be the lead on this. And
So
I don't mean to target you, but we had talked about this before,
Yeah.
so I know it's something you're interested in.
Yeah,
I hope that's okay, yeah,
happy to.
yeah.
So are you suggesting that we just strike the dress code, because dress code was something I had.
Well, we're not gonna talk about whether to strike it, we're just flagging stuff now. And then he's gonna go through and have another version to offer.
Okay.
So we're not making any decisions right now. is the
Okay,
point.
yeah, but, okay,
Yeah.
so that was another area I flagged too.
Did you guys have other, did anybody else have anything before we move on? Other specific questions or items to add to the list? Okay, then I'm going to move on to the action items, and the first one of those is approval of the minutes from the July 18th, 2023, regular meeting of the Board of Trustees. Now we are on page, we are on page 64 of the packet. So do I hear a motion? So moved. And a second?
I'm sorry.
To approve the minutes of the July 18th minutes.
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
I'd like a discussion.
Okay.
I was, so I know that I ended up spending a lot of time asking questions about the master plan. But I don't see any of them in here. Is that, and that's okay with me if it's not, if they shouldn't be in here, if they're too specific or something, but I know it took up a lot of the time.
So we are moving to kind of a higher level summary minutes that without diving into as much detail about the discussion. And that's perfectly allowable.
Okay.
And part of the idea is that, anybody can look at the meeting if they want to, if they really want to deep dive. So what I've asked is that the focus be on the decisions of the board, and not so much, and really just like, this is what the board had a discussion about these matters, and this is what was decided, without necessarily trying to recreate the debate, because what I found was happening was there was a lot of discussion about, well, that's not really what I said. I really said this, or I really said that, and to me, that's not necessarily a fruitful use of our time as a board. And I also am not sure that it's helpful for the public. And so I have asked for higher level summary minutes, which I do feel is a best practice and a more common practice. And so that's why you're seeing that change here.
Okay, I don't feel strongly about it, I just wondered about it. Because I
It's a
know
change,
I know
yeah.
that it was like about a half an hour
But
meeting.
I think your questions about the master plan are really important, and we're going to need to approve the master plan when it comes back to us after the 60-day public review period, and we need to make sure that the board's comments are understood by the master planning consultant and by Marty, who was at the last meeting, and I think you have been very clearly communicating those concerns. So I mean, we do want to make sure that that all gets translated into the master plan, but the minutes aren't the mechanism for that.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you for that, Karen, that's helpful.
Are there other comments or questions about the minutes? Any more discussion? Okay, then let's vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes of the July 18th, 2023 Board of Trustees meeting?
Yes.
Yes. Aye.
Yes.
Any opposed? Okay. So then we're going to move on to, was there a second? Oh, yeah, the June 14th, 2023 special meeting of the Board of Trustees, which was the interviews of the trustee candidates. So do I hear a motion to approve the minutes of the June 14th, 2023 special meeting of the Board of Trustees?
Which, is there a page number on that one? I guess I'm just getting lost.
62 and 63. It was actually in front of the one we just did.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that was,
That's okay, okay. All right.
so 62. Second, do I hear a second?
Second. Karen?
Karen Nolte. Michelle Stamboula, second. Any discussion? I just want to thank everybody who came, including Gretchen and Lois Beerbaum, our other candidate, and then the two candidates who participated remotely, everybody who came in on their time off and participated in that, so thank you. So is there any more discussion about that? And if not, I'll call a vote. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so next, we've got the big item, which is the approval of the millage rates.
Can
So-
I actually ask I think it's a point of order, about the minutes that we just passed? Sorry, I wasn't quick enough. Do we have the other documents that include the answers from Jeffrey and Regina and Lois?
We do.
Yes.
Okay, they
They were in that.
they're not here, so I just want to make sure that with what we approved, they were approved with it, because it does reference them in the.
They are a part of last month's board packet.
Correct.
So they're not affixed to the minutes, but they're in the July Board of Trustees packet.
The minutes that we just approved say their questions are on the attached documents. So I feel like we should probably just attach those documents to it if we have them. Just
Okay.
to make sure that it's all,
Okay, so
Maybe
when,
not. I don't-
when we post it on the website, we can attach, yeah,
sorry.
yeah. think
I should
that's
have done
good.
that faster. I wasn't-
And
That
I
was
have
good.
those.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they weren't added. My apologies. When I was facilitating the meeting, they weren't on the agenda. But I do have those documentation.
I knew I had seen them. That's why I
Yeah.
just wanted to make
Yeah.
sure that we have them in the,
Yeah.
okay. Sorry.
No, good catch. Anything else about the minutes before we move on to talk about the millage? Okay, so we're going to move on to item 7B, which is the resolution to approve the 2024 millage rates. Do I hear a motion to approve the resolution to approve the 2024 millage rates?
I'll move to approve.
Second, with the understanding that's just the new memo in the revised agenda, correct?
Yes, right. And so, yeah, there were some errors in the resolution that was included in the packet. So Chris very kindly helped to correct the resolution, and the corrected resolution is on everybody's desk.
So
Or is in front of everybody.
It's the one that, the total expected to raise is 2.4 million, is that correct?
2.47. so,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct. It is the one that has the number 4 with the farm preservation.
Right.
Yeah,
It's 23.
this is the correct.
7, okay.
But they both say that. The original one says 23,600.
So it's the one that was paper
So this one we
clipped.
should rip up.
It's not in your original package. Yeah, rip up the one that was in the
I
packet.
don't see one that was.
In your original packet? It was page,
Page 68 of the original packet
Oh,
is
okay.
void, and what is the motion under discussion is the one that was on at your place when you walked in.
Okay.
The easiest way is that the one in the packet was double-sided, right? Or is it
Yes.
just in my?
Yeah, the one in
So
the
this
packet
has-
was
The correct
double-sided.
one has a blank back page.
Yes, and the correct version has the farm preservation millage on it.
That too.
There's that little clue. So is there any discussion about this millage resolution?
Just so that we're clear, is that the only change? Was the add, or are there additional?
There
was
were-
one additional change, and that was,
One says
Well,
Yeah, one of them.
yes.
yeah, one of the
One
reduced
stated
from
reduced.
the fire millage was not reduced.
The police millage.
Thank you.
The police
was not
millage, I'm sorry,
reduced.
yeah.
So that was struck, and the farmland preservation, the .5 mil.
And then,
Was the addition.
and then the total value
Which
was.
raised the
was-
expected.
Was raised. Mhm. No discussion? Is that this because of the great presentations that we had at the start of the meeting and all the questions you got to ask then? All right, then I guess I will do, because I consider this pretty important, I'm going to just do a voice vote. So I'll go the other way this time. Gretchen Driscoll?
Yes.
Laura Sanders?
Yes.
Michelle Stamboulalis?
Yes.
Mary Smith?
Yes.
Lonnie Scott?
Yes.
Karen Nolte?
Yes.
And myself, Karen Sickinga, yes. And none opposed. Great, good job, guys. I'm excited about that. So the next couple of amendments are, our next couple of action items are budget amendments. And I wanted to start this off with a little bit of discussion about this. I talked about this in a prior supervisor report, but I want to say this out loud. So our budget has been set at a line item level, which is not it's not recommended for townships and it's not a best practice. And what that means is we have items in our budget that are $500 or $100. And if we spend $102, because of the statute around budget variances at the state level, I have to come back to the board and ask for a budget amendment to increase the budget from $100 to $102. A better practice, and we have a lot of, so our budget is also complex because we've divided it into a lot of departments. So we've got a very small staff, we've got a budget, our actual expenditures have been less than $1 million. But we've got a supervisor's department, we've got a treasurer's department, we have a general government department, we have a planning department, we have a clerk's department, so I want to say we probably have like 20 departments or something, and within each department there are several line items, and so that is a very fragmented budget, and what that means is for us to be in compliance with the statute, I'm constantly having to come back to you guys with budget amendments. And next year, when we do the workshops, we will be discussing at the line item level, because those line items are needed to help you understand the budget justification and why we're asking for the dollar value we are at the department level. But if we then when we do our public hearings, we budget at the department level, then you guys aren't going to be peppered with budget amendments all during the year, and you're going to be able to stay focused on bigger picture policy items instead of thinking about, whether those pens cost, $5.99 instead of $4.99, and some other line item was a little less expensive, and it all comes out in the wash. And so I just wanted to set the stage for that, and then I wanted to say, because I'm puzzling over this, because I don't like having to come every month with these budget amendments, and so what I'm thinking I want to do, with your permission, is put into the consent calendar any budget amendment that is, to my mind, not really a policy issue. It's just these minor adjustments that, had we budgeted at the department level, you would need to know about it. So we're over-expending in one area and under-expending in another. Go ahead.
I would maybe put under a certain amount, like if it's a $10,000 or $50,000 budget amendment, that should not be on consent. I wouldn't want that on consent. I think we need to talk about it. Mm-hmm. So if it's a nominal
Okay, well,
change,
let's then just give me a guidance then, like what would you like?
I don't know, because I don't know the budget, but what's a reasonable, what do you think as the
$5,000.
Okay.
Yeah, I think $5,000
Okay, so
is
it's 5,000,
reasonable.
any kind of budget adjustment that's more than a $5,000 change from the budget would need to be on action.
Okay.
Then anything under that could be consent.
Okay, that's perfect.
Then
And
it-
I was going to try to divide it by like a policy matter versus an accounting issue, just a, like a minor variance. But a dollar amount makes it really easy. And then I'll have the discretion also, if it's under $4,000, but I think it's a policy matter, I can always put it on the
Right.
regular agenda. So let's just set it at
And of
five.
course, anybody here could take it off consent.
Yes, that's right. Anybody can take it off consent. That's right. And I forgot to invite you guys to remove things from the consent
Does
calendar.
everybody understand that?
But you can always do that. You can alwaase ask to take
Taking
something
off
off
consent?
if you want to discuss it.
Actually,
Yeah.
no. I
Yeah.
think, you should walk everybody through. I
Yeah.
don't think everybody understands how to
Yeah.
take things off consent.
Yeah, so when we approve the agenda, you can say, oh, I want to move this, if I put a $4,000 budget amendment onto the consent calendar, and you think, actually, I want to talk about that because, say, it's political, or whatever, you might want to talk about it, then you can say, I'd like to remove that item from the consent calendar, and then it'll just go on to a regular action item, and it'll amend the agenda. Mhm.
Well, we vote on it and then, right?
Yeah, you vote on the approval of the agenda, and the agenda gets
It
amended.
just removes it, so we can have discussion.
It gets put under the action items. Mhm. Yeah.
Did we ever also set a dollar figure that when we are working on projects that we can spend as long as we're not going over the line item of that budget? Did we ever set that dollar value? I know we talked about it.
No, that's going to be part of our board rules.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's going to be part of our board rules. So,
Great.
so with that in mind, then this first one is, this was, so the only thing I would say is that so in this case, like, to me, this was just an error, this was like a minor thing. There was an $8,000 attorney's expense last year, fully reimbursable by an insurance claim, but our total budget for zoning administration attorney's fees is $10,000 a year. When that $8,000 fee hits, our whole budget is blown. So we don't need 10,000 this year. We really need 18,000 just to keep it at the prior year level. But in fact, I was just forecasting based on the other attorney's fees that we might go a little bit over. So I thought I would kill two birds with one stone and bump it up a little bit, even though according to Bodman, they're not actually, there were some heavier expenses early on, and that's all cleared out. And so they're not actually expecting to need that extra $2,000, but I don't want to have to come back to the board for a second amendment. So I asked for 20,000.
So I was going to call you and ask you this before, but I had my granddaughter today, so. So there's offsetting
Revenue.
income, right?
Yeah.
Is
But
that, you
we don't have to do
discuss-
budget, we don't have to do budget amendments for variances on the revenue side,
Oh,
only on
okay.
the expense side.
But that would be an adjustment once this insurance payment gets made.
Well, it's going to be an actual that shows up in the
Yeah,
actual, it's
okay.
going to show up under
Right.
miscellaneous revenue in the
Right, okay.
actuals column, but it's not going to change the budget.
Okay.
So we actually already have like $17,000 or $18,000 in revenue on that line. And that, I think, is from a prior insurance payout. And so now I'm doing another $15,000 insurance claim. So we're going to have that $32,000 revenue line.
Okay, thanks.
Woohoo, we can.
It's too bad we don't get to talk about, because it's kind of fun to talk about more money coming in.
Yeah, it is kind of fun.
We're just
It's
talking about
more
the
fun to
spending
talk about
side.
that. And I will warn you guys, last month I did a budget amendment to shift planning expenses from salary into consultant, and we miscalculated on what the payout of David, like how much time does David have left and what's that going to cost? So I was too aggressive about that. So I'm going to have to come back to you and do that again. And with our $5,000, I was hoping to put that on the consent calendar because it's kind of embarrassing, but it's going to be more than $5,000, so we're going to have to make it an action item. Sorry, guys. Go ahead, Lon.
I have a separate question, and this is, I started late in 2023. Is the board notified of this type of litigation? Like, did the board know that this, because?
I did not know about it, and that's actually on my list of things. I didn't know that you could submit insurance claims for litigation, but of course it makes perfect sense. And then also I didn't know about the litigation, and I was wondering about that, and that's on my list to talk to our attorney about. So it seems to me that, my gut is we probably should know because
Yes,
we're an
that's-
entity, and we are
Yes.
responsible for the entity. And so for the board not to know felt a little uncomfortable to me, but I don't.
Yes.
Wasn't it a zoning concern or something?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's zoning. Sinead, do we usually notify the board when there's litigation?
So I don't think there's any rule on that, and I wasn't involved in that litigation myself. If I remember correctly, Alex talked to Diane about
Yes,
it.
yeah, Diane was.
And I think that information was just not passed along to you all.
Right.
It was so out of proportion to all the other legal expenses relating to zoning enforcement were like $500. The bill is separated by matter, so it gives the names of the people. And all the other ones were, like, the most was, you know, a couple $1,000s or whatever. So this was on a different scale, and I was interested to know. So I thought, I kind of think we should have know about that.
I just think in general, especially as we're talking about like board rules and the thing, because this is something we actually last month also I had flagged that just I would really love for those types of things to be just part of like the supervisors. Like
No, because we would go into closed session to talk about that.
Sure, I don't need,
yeah.
not even the details
Yeah.
though, just to know that there was litigation or that the township isn't, you know, if that we're at least informed of those types of things. The other thing that we were talking about last time is like any of the changes, the personnel changes or those kinds of things. I feel like the board probably, you know, not just at the board meeting should be finding out some of those things. So like just figuring out that communication structure of what things can be shared, so that we're not reading something in a packet like this and going, what litigation, right? Which I know
Yeah.
none of us do. But just as we're looking at what those policies should be, I think
Yeah.
figuring that out would be helpful.
Yeah, I agree. And I am really trying to report out to you on personnel changes in the supervisor's report, so that is something that I wanted to know about, and so I'm trying to make that supervisor's report answer all the questions I
Yeah.
had kind of before I was.
That's why it came up last, because I think it was the one last meeting where it was in there. So that's why I thought even like whatever that mechanism is, if it can't be the supervisor report for litigation, just the additional information is helpful.
Yeah, and, yeah, good. So,
And oftentimes it's fine, you know, litigation is public, so oftentimes it's fine.
Oh, okay.
Just provide a quick update, you know. We filed a brief in this case, you know, that's public information, easily accessible. If you wanted to discuss strategy, then you would want to go into closed session, and that is provided for in the Open Meetings Act.
do you know what this was, this litigation?
I know it was a zoning matter that caused a lot of consternation.
Oh, okay.
With one of my colleagues. It just took a ferocious amount of time.
Yeah.
But I would do on that one.
Yeah. And I asked the insurance guy today, well, can we bill for our own time for this? You know, because Bodman tracked their own time, and some of their time was time with our staff. And I was like, well, can I bill for my staff too? Because that's all documented in this, you know, the supervisor's time, the zoning officer's time, and all that, you know. So I'll let you know about that. But right now, the claim stands at $15,000.
Thank you.
Okay, so can we does anybody have any questions about this specific budget amendment? And if not, shall I do a vote? Okay, so all those in favor of?
Aye.
Oh, aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Okay, so then the next budget amendment, if you guys, yeah.
Excuse me a minute, who made the motion on that? And who's,
I'll make the
A while
motion.
ago, I don't
because
remember.
you voted on it, but I didn't hear.
Maris made the motion, Gretchen seconded. And then the next matter is a budget amendment to correct errors in the American Rescue Plan budget allocation. And if you guys remember, we urgently had a special meeting, and I believe it was in May. I think it was the first meeting that I presided over, because Jennifer Conlon's office had called me and said, you got to fully deploy your American Rescue Fund monies immediately. And I looked at the budget and I was like, I knew there was a problem, because I could see when I looked at that budget that we had allocated more funds than we had received. But I decided to just go ahead with it so that we could that was a good error to my mind, because we were over deploying the funds, and then I knew I could come back later and you know, figure out like how much did we really get and do all that. And so now I'm just coming back to do that housekeeping detail. The only minor point is that at that time, I believe we decided to zero out the senior center for ease, basically, and thinking, well, we're just going to move this all to the general fund so that we can, I can't remember why, but anyway, the senior center transaction was occurring even as we met. And so when I got back and to actually implement the budget amendment, there was the senior center transaction had hit, so now there's a 5,000 deficit, so I'm restoring that senior center money. That was a transaction timing issue with the budget amendment, so anyway, so this just cleans up the American Rescue Fund and then makes the offsetting changes to the general fund. Did I ask for a motion to approve
Not
this?
yet, not
Okay,
yet.
so is there a motion to approve this?
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
So that was Maris Metz' motion, Michelle Stamalelli's second. Any discussion?
I just want to make sure I'm clear on the Dexter Senior Center. So we had allocated 5,000 from the general fund, and my recollection is when they presented, we then allocated an additional 5,000 from.
Yes, so there's an error here, actually.
four.
Oh,
Four.
which is,
4,000, correct.
which is the removal of this 5,000 from the general, fund, you know,
From
your point.
Well, that-
No, we moved the funding into the general fund, but the transaction occurred in the American Rescue Fund. So now we have to take the money back out of the general fund and put it back into ARPA. So what's missing is the 101 line on this for Dexter Senior Citizens.
I just
Good
wanted to make
catch.
sure that we
Yeah,
caught, that we had
yeah,
both.
Yeah, good catch.
It was 9,000 total.
Yeah.
Yep. But it's going to be 5,000 from this line and then 4,000 from the general fund. So what should be on here is the removal of the reduction of $5,000 from the general fund, and it's because we're moving that back into ARPA. So good catch, Lonnie. Any other questions?
I have a quick question of where did we move the multi-lakes money to out of the ARPA?
That
We had
is,
127,000 earmarked for multi-lakes.
that,
Where did that get moved to?
well, we can look at the
Or
budget.
did we just throw it into general fund and say we're going to pay?
I mean, if we look at, behind the
That's what I-
supervisor's report is my,
Did you catch it?
this is not. So if you look on page 85 of the package, that's my report. This is basically the report that's on the prior page, you know, like this, the report that's on page 85 is the same report as the one that's on page 76, but the one on page 85 has page breaks where the departments and.
This is the old style.
Yeah, these are the same reports, basically, but mine has notes in it. I downloaded it into Excel, and I formatted it and made notes. So they're the same report.
I just don't know where we moved it to.
And Karen, I don't know if I can answer that right this minute, but if I can't, we'll, I mean, I know it's in there somewhere, I just can't remember where. Or I'm pretty sure it's in there, but if it's not, we'll have to restore it.
We'll just have to do another budget. My question coming to that, because they just submitted all their bills.
Oh, I know what the problem is. We approved it, it's on my list,
Yeah.
and I finally put the budget amendments into BSNA today.
Okay.
But there was no line for sewer improvements in the general fund, and I don't know how to add a line into the
Gotcha.
general fund. So I couldn't execute that. So the board approved it, and I have it tracked on a spreadsheet.
Okay.
But it's not reflected in these reports yet, because I have to ask Kim how to do it.
Okay.
I need to ask her about escrow stuff and setting up an account for stormwater.
Yeah.
So can I ask a question on that while we're on that for a second about multi-lakes?
Multi-lakes, go ahead.
Quick question. So we had earmarked 127 or 124,000 to go to multi-lakes to fix Copper Meadows, Silver Lake, and Half Moon Lake pump systems. And they are all repaired now, except, and I submitted the bills, I think were there 3 bills?
Yeah, I saw the bills,
three
yeah.
bills. They submitted another one to me this afternoon for 1,700, which I'll forward, they missed it. But all of that comes up to about 100, and I'm going to say the whole bill is about 107,000. So we have an extra $20,000 in there. Do we want to allow multi-lakes to spend that extra $20,000 on Dexter Township projects, or do we want to pull that back to our budget?
How much, are we talking 20,000?
About 20 grand.
Okay, then I don't want to talk about that now. I want that to be an agenda item, because that's more than $5,000, and I think it's something, it's a policy matter that the board should make a decision on.
Good point.
Yeah.
So we'll put it
So,
on. So I'll write up something
so
for
submit
next
that
month.
to me as a
Yep.
budget, as an action item for next month. please.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will let you know that the Duletsky development is going to cost multi-lakes $100,000.
But it's going to result in revenue for them.
Yeah,
More than that
How
over
long
time,
would
right?
it take to recoup
over
that?
time.
Over
Yeah.
It's only,
time.
Yeah.
it's only 10,000 a
Lot
month.
of time.
cost them how much?
100,000 to cut down that hill. Multi-lakes has to pay 100,000.
Doesn't the developer have to pay?
Yeah,
why
does
It's county, because multi-lakes has pipes under the road.
Okay, we
And
need
so-
to put that on a
Yeah.
strategic plan.
So they
Congress.
need to remove those pipes before the county comes in and cuts that hill down.
So that's not about the, well, we should talk,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
like a
I'll
whole
write it
different.
all up and-
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, and
Okay.
and also I want to understand that, because I'm not sure.
Doesn't sound right.
Yeah, it doesn't sound right to me. I think there should be a way that we can avoid having to incur that they should be able to
Well, we
defray
would
that.
love to avoid
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Well, yeah, let's.
Developers should be paying for costs to
Yeah.
access sewer
Yeah.
service.
Well,
And-
it's not about accessing, well, it's because the
But
county
didn't
wants
this
to cut down the
happen?
road. I'll
Yeah,
write up.
let's take a timeout on this. Let's research this issue. Let's report back to the
Yeah.
board on it, and then we can make a policy decision at a time when we actually understand the matter
Okay.
at hand. Lonnie?
Just to get, I didn't hear the actual answer to this, and now I'm confused. So, but we did originally, and I should say, I was out of town during the emergency ARPA fund meeting, so
Yeah.
it may have just changed, and I didn't know. We did originally have that 127,000 in the ARPA funds for multi-lakes. And I
Yes.
thought we had moved part of the road funding back to our capital improvements out of general fund as opposed to ARPA. But currently under this and the amendment, the multi-lakes is not there. And all the road funding is still out of ARPA.
I thought we shut down ARPA. We spent all our ARPA.
Yeah.
We took our whole ARPA funds,
Correct.
dedicated it
Yes.
to roads.
Less
And
the
then we were gonna
equipment
pay
that,
our other-
less the already expended equipment for Daphne, and then the 5,000, and now the $5,000.
Yeah.
So we wanted one simple, straightforward transaction.
Right.
We said we're going to fully fund, we're going to fund as much of roads as we can out of ARPA, because we know we can we can spend that money immediately.
Yeah.
But what was already expended remained in ARPA, and so everything else that was funded from ARPA moved to the general fund. And that's what didn't get, but the sewer I have not,
You need a new line item.
I did not know how to put the budget amendments into BSNA until last week. So we've been approving all these budget amendments, and I've been tracking them on a spreadsheet. And then I went in to put them in to BSNA, and I couldn't do the multi-lakes one. I couldn't add it to the general fund because there's no line for it. So I need more help. I need more technical assistance to do that.
So if I can just ask a different way, so that I make sure I understand before we vote. That money, because the ARPA funds, one of the budget amendment that we're being asked to approve today is also a reduction in what we thought the ARPA funds were, down to 645 instead of 683, which we had put into the budget.
Right.
The additional 123,000, whatever it was, 127,000 is also accounted for?
In the
'Cause-
general fund.
In the general fund, it's just not showing up on this report.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but what we do need to amend this, well, I don't even know if I don't think we need to even amend the motion, because the motion is to approve a budget amendment to correct errors in the American Rescue Plan budget allocation. This accounting of it, the details of it, is missing the general fund line. But that doesn't matter, because we're not voting on, this is just supporting details, so I don't think we need an amendment to the motion. But I've noted that error, and I'll make sure that it all ticks and ties.
Yeah, that all,
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that because that averages out to what? $170-ish thousand. So I just wanted to make sure that we did have it somewhere and that we weren't going to have a hole of that amount once those.
No,
goals
because
come
you can see we still have budget. We have general.
Oh, yeah,
funds.
I wasn't worried about overspending as much as we spent a lot of time making sure everything was classified in the right
Yeah.
spaces, and so just making sure that it was all clean for that.
Yeah, and the next report will show the budget amendments.
Thank you.
Okay, any more discussion? Okay, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Point of order, Karen,
What?
this is financial, should you not have a roll call vote on financial issues?
I don't think it's needed. I mean, I thought it was needed for the millage because that's such a large matter, but these are minor matters. No, I don't think so. Okay, so then the last item, the one that I added and is not in your packet, is this letter of support for 5 Healthy Towns Foundation for a grant application. You guys may be aware that the state of Michigan provided $6.5 million to Dexter for refurbishing the wellness center and
Really?
oh gosh, and I was so
I
excited
missed it.
because I thought I was going to get to meet Gretchen Whitmer because she was going to come do a ribbon cutting about it, and then I didn't get to, she canceled it.
That's
I mean,
great.
she I don't want to say she canceled, but she rethought the event, and so I didn't end up getting to meet her. It's like, that would have been
Was that
really
ARPA
awesome.
money?
I don't know, actually. I'm
It
not
was the
sure.
grant from March
Yeah.
that we filed for the sewer. What
Yeah.
was that?
For community support or something.
Comes
Yeah.
up every
Yearly?
March?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Community
yearly.
revitalization or something like
Yeah.
that?
Could have been it.
Yeah, that's one that I accidentally.
$6.5 million
Yeah.
to a
Yeah.
rec center?
I know.
Well, and it's to create a whole community center, you know, and it's to give, I mean, there's a whole plan that I'm not
Because they were
aware.
originally going to sell it, weren't they?
Yeah, they were, and I've got to find out about it, and I'll
Oh, they're
report.
going to put the senior center in there.
Yeah,
right?
and I-
Trying to
Now it's going to be
sell
an
Dexter
intergenerational
Wellness
center.
for the 7 million, and Dexter Senior got the 6.5 million, so they're good. And the schools are combined with it too.
Yeah.
Because the kitchen is going to.
Well, anyways, I'm going to let's cut off this discussion too, because I'm going to find out about this month and put it in the
Awesome.
supervisor's
That's very
report, and
exciting.
I don't really know what the situation is, so, but for now, so this is now Chelsea is pursuing funding to refurbish its rec center, so do I hear a motion for this? I'll move. Okay, and a second? Support, okay, so, let's say Lonnie Scott was the second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, okay, so now, we're almost at 2 hours, but I did, we haven't, so I've been including the supervisor's report, and I want to just give a moment to see if you guys had any questions about the supervisor's report, the clerk's report. Well, let's start with the supervisor's report. Any questions about that, and also any comments, like anything else you guys would like to start seeing in this? Is this useful?
It's great.
Anything. Yeah.
I think it's very useful. I have a question, and it's just more, it's in the master plan area, and it's like, so there's a big call for feedback, and my question is, what's the process? Like, how do the changes get implemented? Is the committee then going to meet again and decide what feedback do they implement, what do they not? How do any specific things that have been recommended get changed? How do revisions get made?
That's a really good question, and I don't know that we actually, because I'm thinking this through now, because you guys are starting to send me, and I forwarded over yours and somebody else's today to Rowan. He received those, but is he just to make those changes, or do they get discussed
Can
first?
I answer the
Yeah,
question? So if my understanding, and Marty can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that if it's clerical errors and things like that that are not policy issues, that he can go ahead and make those changes. But anything that is a significant or content-based change,
Yeah.
it has to go back to the planning commission for the planning
I'm
commission to
talking
hear
about
it.
content-based
Yeah,
changes,
yeah.
yeah.
So it has to go back to the planning commission. There's another public hearing,
Okay.
and there may be even 2 more public, what I don't know if is whether it's 1 or 2 public hearings before it's finalized. And then it comes, because of the resolution that you guys passed, or a motion, I don't remember which was, last month, it will also come back to the Board of Trustees for approval. So what will happen is Rowan, our master planning consultant, will collect all of these changes. He'll be in constant communication with Marty, and they'll be making decisions about how those changes should get integrated into the final plan. And there's basically those 2 choices. It's either just clerical, and you could just go ahead and fix it. If it's the Hudson River or something in there by mistake instead of the Huron River,
Yeah.
that doesn't require a public hearing, that's just a mistake. But if there's anything conceptual, it has to be brought to the public again for another hearing and then brought to the board.
Yeah. Okay. I think maybe that's just important to clarify, because one thing that always bothers me is kind of like the idea of putting out to the public that you're asking for feedback, and then the public not knowing whether, we don't want it to be lip
It got
service,
accepted.
right? Yeah, and I don't think it is. I just wonder what the process is, and maybe we should say that, put that out there.
Yeah,
At our movie night, or in some kind of simple way.
yeah, and in the loop. maybe,
Describe
too.
the process for if changes get made, how do they get made?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Other questions about the supervisor's report? Any comments? I mean, is there any, do you guys like the content? And is there any content that you long to have that isn't in there, or,
Thank you, great job.
Yeah.
That's great.
It's very helpful.
Okay, so then let's move on and just ask the same question about the clerks and the treasurer's reports, if you had any questions about those. And actually, I don't know where those are. I think this got a little bit
Way
up.
back there.
So are you by hand having to redo the financial report? Is that what you said you put it?
I pulled it down into, no, I can just save it as an Excel. I can just download it. I can run it and save it as an Excel document, and then I can put the notes in the column. I can add a notes column.
That takes a lot of extra time. Are you looking at trying to do it a different, like,
What do you mean? It
Like
doesn't take a lot of
Can
time.
BSNA run that?
I just run a
Yeah.
query. I just run a query, and it gives me the report, and I say save it as Excel.
oh, I see.
Yeah.
So the second one that you said with the one that has the notes on it, that's the one you run as a query. So it doesn't take a lot of time.
No, but I could talk to you about it, but I may, I do, but anyways, but it's a query. It doesn't take.
Yeah.
it
No, I
doesn't-
thought it looked really
It doesn't
good.
take very much
I
time.
like the summary page too. Nice job.
The summary page. Did I do a summary page? I don't even remember that. That was. Oh, that was from last
That
month.
gives good
Yeah,
perspective.
Yeah, that was last month. I didn't put that in again. Do you?
Yeah, there's one in here.
Oh,
Helps see where,
yeah.
Yeah. It's like page.
Oh, yeah, I see it. I thought I did this last month, not this month, but,
Last month, we just had the summary page.
oh.
We didn't have.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
Yeah,
I did
That's why I
do,
asked for the other budget
I
report.
did do this last month, but I.
Yeah, but only
yeah.
your summary page got inserted last month.
Yeah.
This month, everything's there, it's cool.
Okay. So then the clerk's report is next, and it's on page 94. Did you guys have any questions about that? And then the treasurer's report, and just noting in particular about the treasurer's report, which is on page 106, that we are probably going to be coming back to you to request some changes in the investment policy.
yeah.
Because we want to, yeah.
Can I ask a question on the police, the sheriff's report?
What page are you?
109. So if I remember, maybe I'm not remembering this right, so tell me if I am or not. Wasn't it a third? Webster was paying a third, we were paying a third, and Dexter was paying a third? I think so. Isn't that how it played out?
I don't know, I haven't dug into these details at all. I don't know anything about the funding parameters, and in fact, we're trying to get a meeting with John Scharf, who's the treasurer of Webster Township, to talk about these police and fire millages, which are going to be coming up for renewal soon. And I don't understand the three-party agreements right now. The fire department, I don't understand the police one. The fire one is driven by runs.
Yeah.
And we were puzzling over why Dexter Townships was
Well,
more.
that's what I'm puzzling
Yeah.
here, because
Yeah.
Dexter City just seems so much higher than Dexter Township. But if I remember.
Well, but that's new.
A third.
For the police?
Yeah.
No, it was, it's number of officers, and
Yeah.
we pay for
It's not a, that's just, we're just contracting with the sheriff's
Yeah.
department. There's no multi-jurisdictional agreement with the sheriff's
I
department.
want to say Dexter paid for 3.5, Webster paid
Pay
for
for two.
1.
Yeah,
we had
something,
2.
there was something out of
Yes,
kilter. Okay.
Yeah.
yes.
So I did have a question on the treasurer's thing, to get back to that, but, so I know you said in here you're evaluating other investment vehicles? And we're going to talk about that on August 28th?
We can.
No, I don't think we'll talk about it at the,
Strategic planning?
no, I don't think so, because I wouldn't say.
I mean,
that's-
if you wanna,
I just was wondering, because I know you said in the newsletter, you increased
Oh,
your
we've increased
return
interest
34%
return.
or something?
Yeah.
I think that's great, and I was just wondering, like,
Oh, Michigan class.
yeah, what is that, and maybe,
Well, we could
Well,
even have Matt come in and talk to.
is the
them.
MTA,
No, he lives
does the
in
MTA
Tawas.
have tools or advisors, like, I know.
I had a whole presentation when I first invested with Michigan Class, obviously way before you were here.
So
And
is
then
Michigan
also-
Class, what is Michigan Class?
Michigan Class is like a liquid fund investment, but in our policy, that's the thing, is we're going to come to possibly asking you guys to change our investment policy because there's certain percentages that have to be in certain vehicles.
Right.
Right, so the way that the market is with inflation and everything else, we're kind of looking at different options now, possibly increasing those liquid fund investment money. And then also, back when we changed the investment policy, the market was
different than this.
really, really bad. And now it's shifting a little bit. It was actually really good for increases on investment, but there is going to be a shift. And I mean, it is.
I guess the reason, because you have a really significant fund balance, so, I
Right,
mean,
yeah,
I think that's a really, I don't know if you're not talking about strategic plan, I think we should talk about it at some point in the future, because there's a significant amount of money, and unless you
Yeah.
have it designated in the next year or two for some kind of capital project, that should be.
Well,
that's where we're
that's the
at.
overall topic that we're going to be talking a
Okay.
lot about, our
So-
strategic plan. We're not going to be talking specifically about our investment policy, but we are going to be talking about how to deploy those significant fund balances, which to my mind are not in compliance. We need to deploy those fund balances. We can't just have them sitting in a bank.
Right.
And there was I did an analysis that was in the supervisor's report, I think, either last month or the month before, because those are, I think, the only two meetings I've presided over, but where I analyzed our fund balances compared to our fund balances policy. And what I found basically was that we've got about 4 million plus in general fund balances, but our fund balances policy requires us to have something in the neighborhood of 2 million. So the difference between our fund balances policy and our fund balance, and our fund balances and our policy is over $2 million.
Right.
And we have to figure out how to deploy that $2 million
So that's
for
what
the
we're talking about.
benefit of the township. And that's what we're going to be talking about, strategic planning. And then the other issue
That will
is,
help me.
and the other issue is that we have a structural surplus, budget surplus, and that is partly because we have historically based our budget on prior year budget instead of prior year actuals, and we are always over budgeting, and particularly in some things like, per diems for meetings, assumes that there's going to be 100% attendance and that 100% of the meetings are going to take place. So there's over budgeting built into the budget, and I understand the desire to be conservative, but it's resulted, it's too much. It's too much, and we're accumulating
Yeah,
balances.
I was very happy to see
Yeah.
that when I was looking at all this, because when I first started in public office, it was the opposite.
Right, and
Really
you-
bad,
you see-
and I had no idea.
And we're
Back
co-
before
and-
all this stuff was, easily accessible.
And we're under-resourced for the goals that we have in mind, both in terms of just base operations. I mean, I have a long list of strategic activities that I would like to undertake, but I don't have time for them, and we don't have enough staff to deploy for them. And so those are like, I mean, I'll make my little plea now, but I mean, I think the obvious thing to do with our with our structural surplus is more staff, because we got a lot of things we want to get done, and we don't have the staff to do it, in my opinion. But, but that is a big policy decision for the board, and that's why I want to do strategic planning. And then the fund, I mean, you know all this, but I don't know if everybody knows this, but the fund balances we can't deploy for ongoing operational increases, but we can use those for one-time strategic purposes. And I don't know what those would be.
Okay, thank you.
So that's what we got to talk about. And it's a big, fun decision for us to make. But in terms of the investments, we're just trying to adjust the investment policies that we can maximize our return on
Great.
investment.
That's what I was asking.
Yeah, and what we learned at the meeting that we went to is that when we set the investment policy, longer-term investments had a higher yield, but now with the economy's gone a little nutty. So now some shorter-term, ironically, some shorter-term and more liquid investments would actually have a higher return.
So the Woodhill, are they like the township's investment advisor?
No, they're not they're very careful to say they're not our investment advisor, but they're doing our cash flow analysis, and the guy there who is doing our cash flow analysis managed the investments for the city of Ann Arbor. And so he will often say, I'm not your investment advisor, and I can't give you investment advice, but when I was at the city of Ann Arbor,
Right,
I did
okay.
X, Y, Z.
Okay.
Okay, we'll talk to our investment advisor about that, So those are.
Okay.
Those are kind of, like, to me, these are kind of, that's not strategic. The strategy is we want to maximize our return on
Right.
investment while being in compliance with rules about deployment of public sector funds.
Right.
And the details of the policy, we'll come back and ask for approval.
Okay, thank you.
So, okay, so last thing, I think, if there's no questions on the reports, is a call for public comment on non-agenda items. And for the members of the public that are listening, we are working on getting access for Zoom participants, for remote participants. And we thank you to Sam we will be coming back to the board for approval of that change in our practice and policy. But we had, Sam arranged a training, and Karen Nolte and Alicia, I actually don't even know your last name. Alicia Abbott and Janice Miller and Sam attended that training and came out with recommendations for technology changes that will allow that, and then we'll be asking the board for approval to make that change going forward. Marty, Alicia, anything you want to say? So, and then any other issues, comments, or concerns? Board members, staff?
I just want to remind everyone about Community Engagement Night on Saturday. It should be a really fun event. We've talked about it a little bit.
Question.
Yeah.
Did you get a food truck?
Yes. I did not, but Sam did get a food truck.
Sam
What kind
contacted,
of food?
she contacted 30 food trucks.
Yes.
To get us a
What kind
food
of
truck.
food?
so-
Mexican
It's Mexican-American.
Oh, okay, awesome.
Yep, I actually I just got the menu today, so.
Great.
I'll make sure you
Okay.
guys all see it.
It looks delicious.
Sam,
So
do we still have a snow cone machine?
Yeah.
We're getting 2.
Oh, okay, so
And-
we're gonna each have one?
Yeah, I'm picking it up on Saturday morning.
Great.
And my husband is going to be our musician, so don't worry, he's not getting paid.
we will have lots of fun. The Chief Armstrong also confirmed that the UTV that we supported and paid for will be here. The pump still needs to be installed. That's the last piece of upgrades, but it will be here on display in the parking lot as well. And a reminder to anyone who may be listening, the first 50 people who show up get Dexter Township swag bags. And we'll also have the opportunity to comment on the master plan. The movie that evening is Super Mario Brothers. We're aiming to start it around 9 p.m. Hopefully it's dark by then, dark enough at least to start it. And the movie is, everyone's been asking how long it'll go. I specifically picked a movie that was only about an hour and a half long. So we're hoping that we're wrapped up right around 10:30.
Great. And the master planning consultant will only be here from 6 to 7:30. So anybody that wants to comment on the master plan should come between 6 and 7:30, and you can always come back for the movie a little bit later if you want. And the local roads committee will also be there. So if you want to come and talk dirt about the roads, that would be a good time to do it. Yeah.
About the roads, I love it.
And a huge thank you to both Sam and Trustee Nolte for their help in pulling it all together as well. It's been a large undertaking, and it's been
Thank you,
lots of support.
you guys.
Any other concerns or?
Could you send me that menu and I'll put out something to Into the Loop to try to drive what's happening here so we can guide people
I
this way?
actually, after this, I want to talk to you about,
Okay.
like, putting it out to the public.
Yeah.
and- Yeah, okay.
Okay. And my other thing is, in the Loop, we've had maybe 5 or 6 comments from, which doesn't sound like a lot, but for In the Loop, it's a lot, that people are happy with the draft of the master plan. And thank everybody for all their work, and they're very pleased with it. So
Great.
That's good.
That's great to hear.
And the other piece of good news is, last month I said that there'd be 12 homes coming down North Territorial check for PFAS because of multi-lakes, and the state was paying for it. All the tests came back negative.
Oh, yes.
Oh, great.
That's
Oh,
good
great.
news.
Can I ask a
That's
question
good.
about that?
Yeah.
I was driving through Harbin Farms, and it was Copper Meadows, and there's a boil water sign in.
Oh, really? In
at
Copper Meadows there
At
is?
Copper Meadows, as you turn in from North
I
Territorial.
don't
What
know
kind
if
of
they have
sign
it.
is it, Laura?
It's like a yard sign that's right in front of the.
Boiling water is not going to help with PFAS. And
Yeah,
it's
it's
not
gonna
going
make
to,
a-
Okay,
and
but
it's
still,
not,
do you know why that's?
I haven't heard, I heard there,
and
there
it
was-
won't help with,
Yeah. I
with
don't
with
think it's-
1,4-dioxane or arsenic
Okay,
or
I'm just
anything
saying
else.
it's
yeah.
there.
I don't
That
think
my
it's a
question
sewer
is why.
issue. I haven't heard that it's, I haven't gotten any emails from the
So
sewer board
maybe
that
it's
it's
an
an issue.
unofficial.
Isn't
Do
that
they
when
have
the
the- I
sign?
don't think they have the sewer. Do they, Copper Meadows, are
Yeah,
they
they
on
do.
the,
Yeah.
they're on the
Yeah.
multi-lake sewer?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
why we fixed their pumps.
And they have a community well.
I mean, it could just, it's,
So it might be something to do with a
Yeah.
power outage, storm.
Maybe the well
and now
went
just
down.
bacteria.
Before, during a
Exactly.
storm.
But usually I'd get an email that there was a, well, that's not in our.
But there was not
Okay.
PFAS.
Did it
That's
look
great.
like
Yeah, it's
an
not-
official
well,
sign?
let's,
It
let-
did.
It happens
kind of.
often.
That's why I wanted to ask about it.
well, if you see it again, look at it and see what agency
I
is
can
listed on
ask.
it, Mike.
I can
Yeah.
ask multi-lakes if something happened. I don't know.
Okay.
Usually she sends an email if something's happened.
And I wanted to ask everybody, so everybody has committee appointments, and I want to ask you all, there's room on the agenda to submit reports on your committees. And so when you think about, and I want you guys to start thinking about doing that. And when you do it, think about whether something's coming up on your committee that's going to require a future action of the board. We want people to be aware, we want this board to know what's coming up and be aware, be oriented and have opportunities to ask questions well before we're asking to make a decision. And then the second thing is, if something occurs at a board, at a committee meeting that where the public might be interested in it or activated around it, and so a board member might get asked a question, sometime or whatever, make sure to report back to us so that we're not surprised.
I do have one thing that I've been working with for a while. Have you guys ever heard of the Big 400? It was a Chelsea Chamber initiative on regional economic development, and it was basically the 400 square miles that's like our state parks and all the state parks in Washtenaw, got down to Irish Hills, Jackson County. It was this huge area, and it kind of dispersed for a while. So Bob Pierce was really active with it, and Susan Lackey, and there's some new interest in that, and there's been a couple of meetings that I've been involved with, and so I'll keep you posted as time goes on, but it would be basically identifying recreation as an economic development initiative and possibly applying for some grants to promote recreation in this big 400 region.
Great.
So I'll keep you posted.
Okay. Great. Good, and we have a couple other, I mean, you guys know, because I accidentally texted all four of these guys instead of just Karen, that we're trying to get a meeting going with Multi-Lakes and all the participants in Multi-Lakes to talk about submitting potentially a funding application to the same entity that did that.
That did
Yeah.
Dexter C.
Yeah, and this
Nice.
was, I had a conversation with the Huron River Watershed Council about that, and they're very supportive of that, so they're going to be, so we're going to try to get that going.
Great.
Yeah. So I apologize, you guys. I'm a little text challenged sometimes. I think I entered Karen's name, and it automatically populated all four of you guys, so I was like, uh-oh, this is a quorum. But it was a mistake, so. Okay, if there's nothing else.
Can I ask just one more quick question? So when committees, like I know on Multi-Lake, our board members, they're all need to be renewed this year in December, all the participants. But I don't want to renew them all at the same time because right now they're all expiring at once. Is there an issue with when we stagger them? Like put one at 1 year, one at 2 year, one at 3 years,
Well,
so.
let's put a pin in that because I think it probably has to do with the bylaws and our
It could also
bylaws.
do with the
Yeah,
ordinances, depending
yeah.
on the committee. It could
Yeah.
be an ordinance.
Okay.
You know, what you created, the committee.
Okay, so I need to research that before December.
Okay, so, I think people, okay, go ahead, Michelle.
Oh, I just had the same comment with open space. Now that we have two Board of Trustees serving on the committee.
Well,
with
we
the
really
bylaws,
have, oh, yeah, right,
there can only be one.
yeah. Oh, there can only be one trustee? Okay, we gotta figure that out.
Backstage.
Yeah, okay. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So
easy when.
I'm going to say, and do I hear a
I'll
second?
second.
Okay, so that's Nolte moved, Met second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you, everybody, awesome.
I wonder if I shot 3 projects.
I only got one, but it's a big one.
It's a big one. I just want to, you raise your hand on that.
Sitting here and
That's it.
See you tomorrow.
It's kind of funny. Well, like, it's funny just how it's worded.
Oh, you got to remind me.
You got my keys.
No, I think these are my.